Members, the ayes are 109, the noes are 12. The motion is agreed to. Call on Government Order of the Day number 3.
Education Update Amendment Bill, Committee stage.
I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Education Update Amendment Bill. Mr. Chairman.
Sorry. The House in Committee on the Education Update Amendment Bill, in accordance with the determination of the Business Committee, this debate will be conducted on a part-by-part basis. On a theme basis, not part by part. The themes are principles and central management, communities of online learning, boards of trustees and management of schools, establishment of and types of schools, miscellaneous provisions. There will be no debate on clauses 1 to 3, but clause 2 may be referred to in relation to the commencement of provisions as they are debated. The chairperson will determine the length of the debate on each theme, and so there will be no closure motions accepted. There is no limit on the number of calls per member, except for the normal arrangements whereby members can't have more than 2 calls at one time. Members, we come to the first debate on the principles and central management. This comprises of clauses 4 to 37, 39 to 71 and Schedule 1. And just to make it clear to members, this is about the Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities. It's about enrolment, cohort entry, and it's about exclusion. And I wouldn't expect any debate on topics other than that during this theme. Chris Hipkins.
Mr Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to be the first speaker in this debate on the Education Update Amendment Bill. And can I thank all members of the House for agreeing to trial this new approach to the committee stage. I hope that this will result in a more logical debate and some better scrutiny of the legislation put before the House. And I look forward to some interchange with the Minister during this debate as well. The first contribution that I want to make is with regard to the Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities and the setting out in the law of some objectives for our early childhood and compulsory education system. And can I say from the outset that these are provisions being inserted into the Act that I welcome. I have some issues around how they're worded, but the idea of putting some clear objectives for our early childhood and schooling system into the Act is something that has been broadly welcomed by people within the education system. And the idea that we would have a clearer statement of priorities is also something that I think the sector could come to embrace, depending on how that statement of priorities is established and how much consensus is built around that. So first up, in the Part 1A, 2D, 1A2D, it states that the Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities would be for a period of 5 years. So the first question that I have for the government is why they chose the period of 5 years. Because actually 5 years in the lifespan of our education system is very short. Children are in the compulsory part of the education system, the school part, for 13 years, and then they're normally in the early childhood part of the system for at least 2 years prior to that. So all up 15 years is sort of roughly what we would expect, and some children are in the system for much longer than that. And there is a real desire, I think, by people working in education to see a degree of consensus around priorities that lasts beyond a parliamentary term, a 3-year term, or even a 5-year term. So my first question for the government is why 5 years and why not a longer term horizon for this Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities? Because I think there is a real craving from people who work in education to see a bit more stability in some of these things. In terms of the objectives, then they're set out in 1AA, 1A3. It sets out the objectives for the early childhood and compulsory schooling sector. And again, I've been very clear that I think this is a welcome addition to the Act, having a clear statement that will guide future governments in terms of the setting of priorities for the education system. But the real question that I have for the government is why they didn't follow more closely the objectives set out in the New Zealand curriculum. The New Zealand curriculum has been broadly supported by all of the stakeholders to the education system: parents, employers, students, teachers, principals, school boards. There is a broad degree of support for our curriculum and the objectives contained within it, and yet the objectives in this Act are narrower than the ones in the in that curriculum. So, in particular, I've put forward a supplementary order paper. It sits on the table now, which suggests some amendments to this section around the objectives for the system. In particular, inserting the notion of lifelong learning being one of the objectives of the system. We've got to get used to the idea that people are going to come back into the education system throughout their life now. The idea that education is linear, that you start with early childhood, you go through schooling, you do tertiary, then you're off into the workforce or wherever, and that's that. That's over now. And people are going to constantly be coming back through the education system, including for people who left the school system early on in the piece. They may be coming back into the school system, not necessarily into the tertiary education system through their adult life. And we need to embrace that. So the principle of lifelong learning, I think, is something that we should be putting in there. I have made a suggestion to change some of the wording of these to align with the New Zealand curriculum, because the New Zealand curriculum talks about not just participation in community life, it also talks about building a strong and just New Zealand, socially, culturally, economically and environmentally. Those are in the curriculum now and they're broadly supported. So why wouldn't we take this opportunity to incorporate in the law something around which there is already a great degree of consensus? I want to acknowledge the national opposition through the term of the last Labor government for their engagement in the development of the New Zealand curriculum. I think one of the reasons that remains an enduring document was that there was a bit more engagement on both sides of the House in its development, and there has been more support for it. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the last objective here for the system in the first part is preparedness for work. And I've put forward a suggestion that would extend this significantly into promoting the development of knowledge, values and skills to enable students to succeed in further education and live full and satisfying lives, both personally and in the world of work. I think it's important that we don't narrow down the focus of our education system to simply preparing children for the world of work. Actually, it's much more than that. It's about preparing people for life, including the unpaid work that people will do throughout their lives, and I think that that's important. I would like to see that those priorities change to reflect the curriculum and also to have a broader vision for our education system. So I guess I would be interested in the Minister's comment on that. Then I move to Clause 4, or Para 4, where it talks about the consultation requirements required. At the moment, in issuing the Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities in the bill as drafted, the Minister only needs to consult with stakeholders that he or she considers ought to be consulted. I don't think that that's good enough for a primary piece of legislation. I actually think we need to be more specific than that. And members will find on my supplementary order paper that I have spelled out in more detail some of the stakeholders that must be consulted in the development of this. Children must be there. The Children's Commissioner gave a very passionate contribution to the Select Committee in saying that in the development of this bill and in these priorities, children have not been at the heart of that process. They have not had their voices heard enough, and we should go back and start again. So I think that we should ensure that children are consulted in the next part, when the Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities. I think teachers, principals, school boards, early childhood educations and parents should all be included. So that is set out in my supplementary order paper, and I would very much welcome the government's support for that. A few other points on this statement. The first of which is that minor changes can be made without consultation, and yet there is a real lack of definition around what a minor change would be. I've put in some more definition in my amendments around what a minor change would be. I think it's important that the Minister is able to make genuinely minor changes, updates in wording and fixing of typos and stuff. But In the legislation, it says a minor change does not include something that constitutes a withdrawal or replacement of the statement being changed. That doesn't preclude the Minister from adding things to the statement of national education and learning priorities as a minor change. I think adding new material, it makes it more than a minor change, and yet under the definition of the legislation, that would be allowed. So I would welcome the Minister's comment on further clarity around the consultation requirements, because I think that will be very important. Finally, I would like the Minister's comments around how the Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities is actually going to be developed. Because as I said in the very beginning of my contribution, I think there is an appetite within the education community for this, but there is also a great deal of trepidation, if you like, around how this might be developed and where it might go. Because further down the bill, in the part that we are debating now, there is a provision that allows the Minister to set national performance measures. And I think what a lot of people will be very concerned about is that those two things will become intricately linked. And whatever's in the Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities will actually be undermined by an unrelenting focus on simply the performance measures. And we see that already in the focus on national standards and NCEA Level 2 to the detriment of the wider objectives in the New Zealand curriculum. So my question for the Minister is how they will avoid, how the current government would avoid that from happening. If we're setting performance measures, how do we ensure, or how will they ensure that that doesn't undermine the broader objectives in the Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities? And the final point that I'll make, I've only got 40 seconds left in this contribution, is how the current government would go about achieving a greater degree of political consensus around this, because I see this as an opportunity to reach out across the aisle and get some greater stability in our national education and learning priorities. And that is a commitment that I would make, that if I am sitting where the Minister is sitting after September, I will actually be trying to get all of the parties in Parliament engaged in this discussion, because I think it's too important actually not to at least attempt to achieve a greater degree of political consensus around the Statement of National Education and Learning Priorities. There'll always be bits in that we disagree on, but we can at least try and get a high-level agreement like we did with the curriculum.
Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr Chair.